We are joined now by our Thursday friend, Michael Bruntz, Husker247.
Our Thursday friend.
What's up, Bruntsy?
Hello, Thursday friend.
Hello, Thursday friends. What's going on?
I mean, we could be friends other days too, but
I kind of like that. Bruntz, I'm just going to ask you. I mean, you can talk me off this ledge, and it's Omaha, so I love Omaha, so I wasn't terribly upset about the outcome. I was cheering for a good outcome. But Ravi asked me a question in the first segment. I said, baseball is tricky because you can get hot, but typically your staff doesn't all of a sudden become somebody they haven't. Is this baseball team who they're going to be right now, Bruntz? Are you ready to say that halfway through the season?
Yeah, I mean it's you got a half a season of data to go off of.
Did we ever agree on that? We argued about that once.
It's like David Fisdale. Take that for data.
That's the least
data
surprising thing you guys have argued about that.
I know, right? I know. Sorry.
I don't have strong feelings about data and data. I do have strong feelings about GIF or GIF.
All right, let's go with whatever you want to say, Bruntz.
I once listened to two people I was traveling with argue for over an hour about whether the last stop of a bus stop counts as a stop. So it was like we got 12. I wasn't involved. I was beyond annoyed. So it was like, do we have 12 stops or 13?
An hour?
At least.
I feel a lot better about arguing about Patino and RJ Lewis for 2 days. I feel vindicated.
So here's your homework: is to consider whether or not the last stop of a train or bus constitutes a stop. I am of the school that it does because the bus is stopping. But
okay,
I digress.
Not to do this thing, but
no pun intended.
What's the argument that it doesn't count as a stop? Since you are physically stopped,
and how come you're not?
My eyes just glazed over, and
with. It has to be a couple of your colleagues.
This is Schaefer and Christopherson.
It's got to be.
No, this is way before 24/7 was even a thing. So that's anyways. You were asking about Nebraska baseball, and
are you ready to rest in it, even though you know this is baseball?
Well, I mean it's an inconsistent team, and that's kind of the kind of where they're at. And I mean you've got wins over Vanderbilt. You won a series over the number 5 team in the country, and then you think maybe you have a chance to gain some momentum and come out and just look completely inept on the mound. So, I mean, the pitching has kind of been what it is. I mean, I think the weekends you feel okay with Walsh, and even when the bats were struggling and that was getting the bulk of the attention. I mean, the bullpen has not been great. The strikeout numbers and the strikeout to walk numbers from last year have been down. That's not new, but it gets magnified in the midweeks when I don't know at what level of baseball. I mean, I don't even know at Little League that you can expect to walk as many guys and hit as many guys as Nebraska has in the last 48 hours.
Yeah, and midweek had been good, Bruntz.
I know.
Okay, State.
Well, and then I guess are we reverting back to where the midweeks are a struggle and then the weekends look good? I mean, I think it's just an inconsistent team right now. And I mean, the one thing you can say is whatever took place between getting back from California and going to Manhattan seems to have helped the offense quite a bit because you're getting guys hitting. I mean, they beat some really good arms against Oregon State last weekend. And, they had 16 hits last night. You didn't get the hits late when you needed them. But, I mean, it's hard to put those 2 losses at the feet of the offense, given how – I mean, against Creighton, you have your starting pitcher go a third of an inning. Like, it's tough. And you kind of saw the kind of rock tumbling down the hill. I mean, when you have a guy on Tuesday that goes a third of an inning, it forces everybody else to have to pitch earlier than what you had planned. And then when you have 2 midweeks like Nebraska did this week, you got to the end of that game against Omaha, and you're kind of looking at the roster like, okay, like who's left? Like who can get to the ninth inning? I mean, you had Ty Horn essentially throwing his bullpen in the last inning. You had Unger making his debut. Like Aiden Wyatt, I can't remember if he'd pitched previously, but I mean that kind of tells you the residual effects of not getting it done earlier in the week. So to answer your question, I think I am comfortable saying that this is just an inconsistent team. I mean, it would not shock me at all if they go out and like sweep Rutgers this weekend. Like that's just kind of where they're at right now.
Bruntz, do you find it encouraging or discouraging that we've seen sort of both phases of the game look good at different points of the season, but they can't ever seem to line up to be good at the same time? Like, is that a positive or negative in your mind? Because it speaks to the inconsistency, but it also sort of is more infuriating that it almost is flip-flopped.
Yeah, no, it is infuriating. And I think it kind of, I mean, has the pitching been really good this year? Like, I'm trying to
I
think.
do think Walsh has pitched better than 3 and 4, but Horn has not pitched better than 0 and 4.
No.
Although in Louisiana, I thought Horn had earned better.
That's been the one game that you would point to, I think, with him, where it's like he should have won that game, given a normal offensive performance. So I don't know. I mean, it's a team right now that if you're a coach and you're trying to push buttons, I don't know what the button is to push now. Like after that Creighton game, they had a really long meeting in the dugout. I mean, like they didn't even go out into the outfield to talk post game, and it was a pointed conversation. And didn't really do much last night after that one. I mean, I think it's kind of the point now where like whatever is going to happen, you got to kind of it needs to kind of come from the team, I think, in some aspects. I mean, you need this veteran leadership that you thought you had to show up. And if you look at the roster, I mean, there are not a lot of guys that I would say are like mentality type guys who are kind of the for lack of a better word, the kind of red ass guys that are just going to get after guys and play hard. And I think that's been one thing that that they've had to kind of figure out is who's the voice right now that you can kind of go to, because even last year they had that, I think, in some of their better teams recently they've had that, and I just don't know that that there's kind of that leadership right now to kind of put their arms around guys or just really get after them, and kind of demand a higher level of play.
So, Bruntz, one thing that I've seen asked a bunch over the last 24 to 48 hours is kind of what's wrong with the pitchers, most specifically to do with all the walks that you talked about. As you look at this team, the way it's constructed and the coaching staff, do you tend to put that on, hey, there's something going on between the ears that maybe Rob Childress needs to address? It's just the arms, they're not talented enough to execute the way they need them to, like just a weird, fluky series of events. Like, where do you put what we've seen with the walks and kind of all of that with the pitching staff?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's, I think there's more depth on this staff this year. They've got a lot of guys that throw really hard. I think control might be, given up a little bit for some of that velocity. I mean, even Yasa, I mean, his numbers this year have not been all that different from where he was last summer.
I thought we would see him against Creighton to start that one.
Well, I think you would have had he not thrown against Oregon State. And, I think, I do think that there's probably, some arms that are still developing. I mean, some of those, Coates is still a sophomore. Yasa, was not a guy that they were going to put on the mound last year because of the inconsistencies in his development as a pitcher. For guys like White and Unger, I mean, you're putting them out there in a pretty tough spot, to make their debuts. But, I think part of it's, competitiveness. Part of it's just throwing strike one. I mean, the number of times that Nebraska's pitched from behind or, has not been able to close the door on an inning. I mean, the 2-out hitting and inability to get off the field for Nebraska's pitchers. I mean, that was basically the story of the first half of the season was, the offense was not hitting well with 2 outs, and teams playing Nebraska seemed to do it whenever they wanted. So I don't know. I think it's probably mental a little bit. I mean, as much as hitting's probably contagious, I think sometimes when you're not able to throw the ball over the plate, that kind of seeps in too. But they got to figure out who they can trust right now to throw strikes, because it's aside from Will Walsh, there's not a lot of guys that are consistent right now in that aspect.